Hey YouTube, welcome back to our channel. My name is Elena.
And I'm Bjorn.
And this is Vikings React, where we take a look at some of your favorite Viking TV shows and discuss their historical accuracies.
Getting back into Vikings, trying to plow our way through a little bit further to get to the end of the season. We're doing episode 5 from season 6.
All I'm asking that there should be an overlord to whom we could all owe our allegiance. A king of all Norway who will defend us from all external forces.
Is that a steel door?
I have no idea.
They won't expect this. No. But who knows if it's enough?
Do we have any examples or knowledge of the types of defenses and fencing they would have put up?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much protection it's going to offer against, like, a raiding party. It's, like, thin little branches woven back and forth. But, yeah, I mean, that's a historical style of, like, fencing and stuff. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it's, like, how they do their walls and, like, their fences. They just take a bunch of branches and, like, weave them back and forth in between each other, and then they could, like, stuff it with, like, dirt and clay and turf and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Which it doesn't seem like they were doing here. They were just interweaving the branches.
Yeah, they were interweaving the branches in, like, big, like, sections, and then just tying those together. So, like, I don't know how effective it's going to be, because they're thin branches, and they're tied together with, like, lashings, so you can just kind of cut the lashings and push that down.
They would have to reinforce it somehow.
Yeah.
So it seems like we basically...
I could probably just, like, run into it and, like, break it open, to be honest.
Oh,
but,
you're a bear.
I mean, a person, a Viking, could run through it and just, like, break off a section or, like, knock a part of it over, I'm sure. Like, I'm just looking at how they were putting it up, but, you know.
Yeah, I'd be interested to actually see how they finish it off, if they're going to be finishing it off.
Yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't, like, put it up in, like, specific, like, frames and, like put those frame sections up. It'd just be, like, a continuous kind of thing woven back and forth. So, I don't know,
thought that those were, like, sections, but then they rotated them upwards,
so
they kind of became frames.
I thought the same thing.
So, it would be kind of interesting. So, we basically have two villages, one village, one town that's getting ready for some kind of a raid. So, they're using the fencing to provide some protection for themselves. Meanwhile, Vitzurk and his gang are putting up some kind of a steel door in place.
Well, we get to see what that's going to be used for.
Also, that's a lot of steel.
That could be way better appropriated for something else.
Like weapons.
Yeah. I mean, to start, yeah. But, like, just so many other things. Anyway.
She's, like, wearing a kirtle, but it looks like a dress.
I thought we weren't talking about the whole outfits anymore. That's a lost point.
I can't help myself. It's weird.
It's a lost point.
Pig roast. They got a pig roast. That's accurate.
Why have you come back here? Why do you want to hunt me? I want revenge. Swear on your sacred armor. I swear. I swear.
Okay, so the steel door was to try to keep the ghost out. Spirit. I mean, they did do a lot of things to keep spirits out of houses.
A giant iron door wasn't one of them, but sure.
No. He seems desperate, so sure, I guess.
Yeah, just in a manic phase, like you said, so that makes sense. Swearing on arm rings again. We already talked about that last time, I think.
Yeah.
Still cool to see.
It is good. I do like the fact that they keep bringing that back, and sort of like little things like that kind of allude back to the old ways, how they would have given their words and their promises.
Yeah.
And they had to basically keep them.
Yep. Their word was important.
Yeah.
Because they were bound by it. It's like one of the worst things you could do is like break your oath. Because that was a way to just prove that you were dishonorable and untrustworthy and therefore wind up in hell when you die.
Mm-hmm. And
It's
have a low credit score.
And have a low credit score, yeah. Yeah, like in the afterlife, like to enter Valhalla and to like go to like the epitome of like the good place, basically, the afterlife, you'd want to be like an honorable person who kept their word, who would keep their oaths, prove their loyalty, things like that. And if you were destined for hell, like hell was a place reserved for like murderers and treacherous people and oath breakers. It actually specifically mentions oath breakers. So one of the worst things you could do was break your word. Mm-hmm. So it's important. So it's cool to see that they're enforcing that whole like swearing on the arm ring thing.
Yeah. Now, as far as the spirit, and his way of trying to keep it out, obviously they wouldn't have used steel doors to try and keep out spirits. And we talked about that a little bit too. There were different means that they used.
We talked about that a lot.
Yeah, that was a whole long discussion.
Yeah. Like doorways and thresholds were important,
right?
Features, in like the Viking house and in terms of spirituality and the afterlife and things like that. But there doesn't seem to be any kind of specific purpose to using a steel door besides that it's thick and heavy. That's like the only, That's the only thing.
But even then, it's not like you could keep a spirit out, regardless.
Yeah.
It doesn't make too much sense. And if you guys are interested and you haven't seen the video yet, we'll link it above for you, so you can go and check that out. We had a pretty in-depth discussion about that topic specifically.
From the wanderers and poets in my great hall, it's a great honor to meet you in person, Lost. Skál.
Skál.
Skál. Skál.
You are too kind. But I too have heard stories of Tokac of the Toll and his brothers herring in Earl Sigva.
Before they get into that,
such as ours,
I do want to point out something that I do appreciate in the scene, and that is the fact that they're not drinking out of horns. It's horn-like cups.
Yeah.
But not actual horns. So one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about Vikings is that they always carried horns with them. And they would always be on their belts or just on their person constantly, and they'd be drinking out of them. And that wasn't exactly correct.
But it's fun.
They had, cups and everything to drink out of because you want to be able to set it down, and it doesn't make sense to be carrying a horn around with you all the time. Horns like this one, actually, that we have, were something that they would use during big gatherings.
Yep.
To do toasts and boasts, pass around the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were mostly reserved for like feasts, or for like celebrations and bloats and things like that. You'd often share a horn. So if you were at a feast, a man and a woman would be paired up together, and you'd actually share a horn of ale together. You could kind of pass back and forth. During like a bloat or a feast or a symbol or something like that, there was like a communal horn that would all be passed around, and whoever would take it would, say a toast or make a boast. Like there was like a modern practice. I don't know how far back it goes. I heard a lot of at a station that it kind of dates to like a more pagan Yule ritual, but we don't really have too much information on that. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing.
More of a modernized version.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
But you basically like take the horn and you like make a boast for the year to kind of like brag. And that's supposedly where the whole like New Year's resolution thing comes from. So for the new year, you're gonna like brag about it. And I think it's kind of the other way around personally. I think it's more of like somebody's trying to make up like a Viking Age reason for why we do what we do. But yeah, so something like this would only really be used for like a feast or a ceremony, something massive. It looked like they're preparing for a feast with all the whale and shark or whatever they're cutting up and butchering.
Yeah.
And like it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility, I would say, if like between them they were sharing a horn of ale or something. Yeah, it might be like a little bit out of place just because it's such a small gathering with just like the 4 or 5 of them or whatever it is.
It's more of a lunch.
Yeah, more of a luncheon, afternoon tea,
Yeah.
second breakfast.
They're just taking a break.
Been there.
The plan is for all of us to appoint you as king. Elect him as king. Elect. That is our way.
I have no desire to wear a hollow crown.
As you wish, Pure Hindsight. As you wish.
I know who's running against him.
Well, it wasn't obvious. I just want to point out that this is not how Norway became unified. There wasn't like an open democratic election that they had.
Well, first of all, it wasn't really a democracy. It kind of was, but kind of wasn't.
They had a democratic all thing.
Yeah.
As part of like their parliament, essentially.
Yeah.
That was democratic in a sense. There was a specific council of like elders of like learned men who would vote on the matters and things like that and support certain parties and create sway and get backing and things like that. So that was more democratic in the sense, more kind of like similar to what we have, like elected officials. I don't think the Gothias were elected. I think they were more like an inherited thing, but you had to like kind of maintain it.
Right.
And like prove that you could actually be a Gothi.
And be smart enough and strong enough for
Yeah.
you to keep your
Yeah,
place.
but they were still supported by the people
Right.
who, looked to them for, for knowledge and things like that. But regardless, it was like a supported group of learned men who represent the whole, which is kind of like what we have in America. However, this is not how Norway was united. It was not some jarl who just decided to create true democracy like a Greek. That's not how it happened. What happened was that Harold Fairhair, at the time Harold Tanglehair, of Norway, fought his way through Norway, and pretty much had other people either swear to him, swear fealty to him, or he'd fight against them and he'd take over their land. And it climaxed in the Battle of Hafersfjord, where we saw Sverdifjell, that monument, which represents the unity of the lesser kings, along with Harold, their swords planted on the ground. So that was the climactic battle, but he fought and killed his way to become King of Norway. It wasn't like a democratic election they held.
Right. Yeah, he didn't sit at a table with Bjorn Ironside.
Yeah,
or
and cast
anyone else.
votes and, speak as like a candidate supported by the DNC.
I mean, I'll give the show a point if King Harold ends up being the king.
That'd
Right,
be
because
nice.
that's exactly what happens. Now, as to how he becomes the king, that's the huge question, and the show's probably going to lose some points for that. So we'll see.
We'll see.
You don't know this, but I fought beside you and your father at the gates of Paris. I was a young man then, and I still had a right hand. What happened to your hand? In the sea battle?
I like his beard.
It was him. Torque told it all.
Real stealthy.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Good night.
It's very resilient for a guy that has a ring in his cheek.
Yeah. Is this supposed to be like a turning page for him?
For...
Ivar? So is it supposed to be like, oh yeah, he was a horrible sadistic piece, and now he's like saving a person who's being tortured. Ooh.
I mean, it could be, because like I said, the last time I saw him, he was like a pretty terrifying warlord, and even in the first episode of this, he had changed quite a bit.
I know you cannot read
And
them.
Mongolia has a lot of
Let me
candles. I
explain
mean,
what they
Kiev
are.
has a lot of candles.
These are legal documents. No, they're forgers, of course.
Wait, I missed what happened.
Yeah,
Forged title.
I'm already going back. Don't worry. I just got confused by paper.
Oh.
I want to show you this. I know you cannot read them, but let me explain what they are. These are legal documents, giving the most ancient legal title to our Scandinavian homelands.
Oh, look, it's even got a little door. Or, I don't know.
One part of it swivels.
Yep. I like a little pauldrons. And the fur gauntlets made of suede.
Just, before we get too deep into this one. Legal documents?
What do you want me to say? No. No.
Over in the Christian lands, yeah.
Yeah. Which makes sense, I guess, for their constructed fantasy
Okay,
realm
yeah.
of what
If they are Christians.
the Ruslands are.
But even that was, like, more for churches and monks to, like, write down what was happening.
Yeah, I don't, and like again, that's more like legislator, like a official diary, more than like legal binding documents that give your kingdom the right over another land like that. No, sorry.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. That comes out of nowhere. I liked at least that he was just like, hey, I know you can't read these, but this is what it says.
Well, because they were in Russian.
First off, gotta put a lot of trust in somebody to be like, yeah, I can't read, but this is all legitimate, and it could just be like, Ivor has a nose like an elephant.
Yeah, so the fact that Ivar is trying to basically help Igor overthrow Oleg in a way.
I followed it.
Kind of points to the fact that he doesn't necessarily trust or has to trust Oleg in this whole thing. So, like, Oleg giving him the papers, he can just be like, okay, but I'm still going to do what I'm going to do.
Yep. So yeah, that's very true. I'm still trying to figure out, I mean, this is more plot, I guess, but I'm still trying to figure out why they have any justification to raid Kattegat. Because he just, like, said that first episode, and, like, they discuss no benefit to them, to Oleg or Igor. So he's just gonna walk thousands of miles cross country just for, like, a dude he captured. Like, that makes sense.
I think they're modernizing that a little bit too much.
Yeah.
We don't need legalese in the show.
Well, like, what does it do for the show? Like, what is bringing in some, like, fictitious official document that only, like, two parties there can read? What does it do for anything? What does it do for the plot?
Well, and the same thing, if Ivar can't read it, then nobody in Norway will be able to read it either, so it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
I think there's a big plot hole here.
Why do they have alpaca?
They have an alpaca? What? They didn't have alpacas, did they?
Nope. Oh, he's going for a ride.
He hasn't been?
Oh no, he's going for another one. Get strapped the in. That was so many mushrooms.
Please don't try this at home. Well, before that ride, another thing that we had talked about previously about armor rings is that they could be used as a form of currency. Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to say that the more expensive ones like that, the more design ones like that wouldn't be used as such. Like, they could be, obviously. But mostly they would have the smaller arm rings that could be cut up for hack silver.
There were some that we know were, like, pretty much used for, like, currency, like the money stamped, you know, like the simple ones and things like that. But there's no reason to say that somebody couldn't use a more elaborate, embellished one for the same purpose. Mm-hmm. They might be slower to part with it, either maybe for sentimental value, depending on if it was given to them, or something like that by a certain person, or could just be because it's so ornamental that it's worth more than they simply want to cut it up for.
Right.
Because that was the other thing. They weren't just... didn't have to give the whole armor. You can cut off a piece and just use it as, like you said, hack silver. So it could just be that they didn't necessarily, whatever they were paying for. I mean, I feel like if you had like a really embellished, nice armoring like that, you didn't have to resort to like cutting off like a little like sliver or anything like that to afford something. You had other, you know, it's like if you have a Lamborghini, you don't just have that Lamborghini and you're living dirt poor, you know, like you have other assets because you can afford the Lamborghini.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess what I was saying earlier is, to your point, you know, you would be a bit slower to part with it because it would carry some kind of a sentimental value. If your Jarl gave it to you for doing some heroic deed, you probably wouldn't then go to the market and then spend it on something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like something like that ornamental, like you wouldn't just hack something like that up because, one, it's a piece of art and it's beautiful and it also shows like a bit of renown to be able to wear it and show it off, but also just because like the inherent intrinsic value of it could be diminished by hacking it apart too. So I feel like they just resort to other things in terms of that, and they might give it as a gift to buy like a certain person's worth or renown or prestige or something like that, or their loyalty, because that's why Jarls gave gifts. That's why Jarls gave out armorings, to buy their loyalty. So that it certainly could be onto something. Yeah. Also, really quickly, those were some expensive mushrooms. A single like silver coin could get you like 16 loaves of wheat bread, because wheat was actually more expensive back in the day. Or it could have gotten you like 30 loaves of like barley bread. So that's just one silver coin, like, you know, that big or so. So that entire armoring. The Vikings didn't have opium dens.
It's a floating platform. They're so extra, I love it.
Never before have our rulers willingly gathered together to elect one of their numbers as King of Kings, King of all Norway. Many have said that such a thing
No, it's never happened.
is impossible.
You're right.
That our rulers, I vote for Björn Ironside as King of all Norway.
And I will also vote for Björn Ironside to be King of all Norway.
Oh, they float.
There's already 3 in there.
I was gonna say. Someone's cheating already.
Back in time. Whoa.
There are snake people in the Viking Age, apparently.
Yeah.
Really quickly, to talk about it on a more positive note, when they were getting ready to go onto their little floaty float dock, before, like, each one of them were like sprinkled with the blood. They didn't show where the blood came from, so that's one thing. But there is historical evidence to say that that could have probably been a thing. Again, only for like ceremonies and bloats and rituals and for like weddings and stuff like that. You'd have like a sacrificial animal that you'd slaughter, and supposedly you drain the blood into like a cup or a basin, like a bowl, and you would sprinkle the attendees with the blood. So that has some historical provenance to it. So that's interesting. I don't know necessarily why they were doing it at the election, but I guess that's a big moment for them, so it makes sense. They didn't show the slaughter, so that kind of didn't make... They didn't kind of connect all the dots, but the implication was there at least.
Maybe it's from the whale.
Probably.
They walked under.
Yeah, could have been. Those bones were real clean for having just butchered that thing. So that's at least a positive note. Now, on to the rest of the show.
Well, they didn't show us the results of the election, so I guess we'll have to wait until the next episode.
Yeah, they cast 2 votes, but there were 3 tablets.
Just to reiterate, King Harald was the first king of Norway.
Yep.
This is not the way he became king. So even if they show him becoming king because he somehow magically gets the next 5 votes, it's just not what happened. He didn't go up against the 8 other kings of Norway and somehow win the throne. There's a part of me that's just like that, like it's so extra, and there's a part of me that just like loves that, but it's not historically accurate at all. There's no historical accuracy in this entire
episode.
Yeah, this episode is kind of a little bit lackluster.
It's going down for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot for us to talk about in this one, actually. Mainly because I feel like a lot of it right now is story driven, so we're kind of watching the story unfold as opposed to what's actually happening.
That's
like,
true.
We can catch little things like the vessels that they're drinking out of, and still looking at the clothing. Clothing department, please get your act together. Please.
It's not difficult.
I can't.
It would save you money, first off.
Watch Norsemen. Watch the background actors of Norsemen. Because the background actors in Norsemen are actual reenactors. Those are their kits, the historically accurate kits, the tents, the utensils that they're using.
It's so simple to do.
And it makes you not pay as much attention to the main characters who aren't as historically accurate, but at least, they gotta stand out in some way. I feel like this episode in general was, it was a filler episode. It was to get some pieces into place and move some people where they needed to be for, like, the end of the season showdown. So there isn't really much to dissect here aside from all of the little details that we can poke and prod at all day long, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be there, Harold wins.
Harold wins, guys.
Yeah,
Spoiler.
sorry.
I mean, the episode's already out. You already know, but so do we. Because we know the history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it too early to talk about spoilers if it happened like 1,000 years ago?
Yep. Apparently. Everybody was surprised when Ragnar died.
His death in the show was done super well.
Oh, it was spectacular.
That was one of the highlights.
That was so great. Except his whole, renouncing the gods thing. That was dumb. But the rest of it was awesome. Like, even his little monologue about, how the pigs will squeal and they find out the board. Like, that was a quote verbatim. And it was awesome.
That was a highlight.
That was electric. Oh, it was so good. 3.5 for me, folks. I'm sorry. We're spiraling back down now. They didn't give me enough to be happy.
Yeah. And the historical accuracy is wavering on the edge. I'm actually gonna drop mine down to a 3. I'm not even gonna go in a point system. I'm dropping 2 points off of mine just because, there's the little things, arm rings, drinking vessels, all of that they're kind of sneaking in there. But like the Harold thing, I just cannot get over. He is the king of Norway, the first king of Norway. And they can't play around with that. That is a huge thing in history that they can't play around with. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified of our future videos. And we'll see you in the next one.
Are you trying to one-up me by dropping your vote down a half point underneath mine?
No.
It's like the Price is Right thing. Like, I'm gonna vote for $1,500. I'm gonna do 1501.
I think we've agreed this far.
Yeah, but now I'm just gonna look petty if I drop mine down again. I'm sticking at 3.5. All right.